My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Welcome back to another episode of Duck Dogs, everybody. I'm your host, Josh Miller, and I'm coming to you from Duck Camp here in Arkansas. So before I get into it, I want to thank our sponsors. Thank you to Eukanuba. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020 is the blend of food that I feed my dogs. And man, this is the time of year that we are really seeing the benefits of this food. You know, this has been a long season. The dogs are normally, or have in the past, kind of been running on empty here, trying to get through these last few days before they get to recover. And it's amazing. It is amazing the energy they have. It's amazing the weight that they've been able to keep on. I am thoroughly impressed, with this food, and I really don't have enough good things to say about it. So go check them out, www.eukanuba.com, and check them out, Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020. Also, thank you to Sitka Gear. This last month has been brutal from a weather standpoint. We were in negative 20 and 30 in Montana. Down here in Arkansas, it has been in the teens, which might as well be negative 20 and 30 with how everybody down here thinks that this is an unbelievable cold. But this gear has helped us stay in the field, has helped us stay comfortable, has helped us stay dry, and we've been living in it. I mean, it's just been fantastic. So you will not be disappointed. Go check them out, www.sitkagear.com. Well, here we are, duck camp, last week of duck season, and it's always amazing to me when you look back September. So September 1st is when we start our early goose season in Wisconsin, and then you roll into early duck season in Wisconsin. Then it's waterfowl season in North Dakota, and it's just amazing how through the year and how it seems to transpire, you get to the end of it, and it's just it's such a roller coaster from the long days scouting, the great hunts, the terrible hunts, everything in between. And here we are in the last week, and we're trying to squeak out every minute that we can out there, because we know here in a few days we're going to be wishing that we could go out, and we'll have to wait a long 8 months or so for that to happen. So it's been a lot of fun, and I am actually here at camp with someone. As I'm here with Brett. You guys met Brett here a couple episodes ago as he talked about his dog Timber. And Brett is here with me, and Brett is here shooting some content. We're trying to get some really good stuff here with just in the field with our dogs, and hopefully some stories to be able to share with you later on. And that those high quality stories should not be from my iPhone. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get some stuff lined up and filmed, and I think we have some really cool stories that we're going to share with you, but something that I'm really excited about. So I thought, instead of you sitting and listening to me ramble about the last week of duck season, have another perspective here as we were both sitting here. And then it wasn't awkward. It wasn't like I'm going to go hide in my room and try to be quiet and record this thing and leave Brett out in the living room. So we decided here it is late. we've had a long day, but we couldn't leave you hanging. We need to get you something this week. So, so Brett, thank you for sitting down with me and talking to everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah. So I want to get your thoughts, because this is your first time you've been at duck camp with me. This is not the first time, this is the first year that you have got to hunt with me, and you've hunted a lot with me. So let's just give me your feedback so far. Like, what have you seen? What are your thoughts? I don't know, like where are you at right now with all the travels?
Yeah, it's been quite a ride so far this fall. We started out in North Dakota, then we made our way out there a couple times actually. Made our way up north and been down here a couple times to your duck camp. So yeah, it's been quite the journey. Every time I know when I get home, I'm exhausted because it's a grind. It's we're not going to some outfitter. We're doing this all on our own, and we're doing all the work, and it's long days, and it's early mornings, getting up, doing everything, and preparing for the hunt. And you get back to the lodge here, and you're like, man, let's have a little lunch, and the next thing you know, your head hits the pillow on the couch, and you take a small little nap, and you're up again and doing it all over again. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a grind, that's for sure. So
let's clarify lodge. We're in a little cabin. So lodge, I appreciate you calling it that, because it definitely gives it a different feel. But yeah, it's funny because it's part of it, right? And I think it's easy to say that. And so once in a while, I'll get on social media, different questions and different things of what people are looking for. And one of the questions that came up here just the other day was how are you guys getting on these hunts, and how are you guys consistently getting on birds? And it's scouting. I mean, these are long days.
Yes.
This is up early to get to where we're going to be so that we're settled in. And as you know, I don't like being late. I'd rather be way early than be late. And then, we have our hunt. We come back. You oftentimes do a little midday training. Hopefully try to get a 10-minute nap in if we can squeeze it in. Yep. Back out, scout, get the next day lined up, get back home, throw some brats or a burger or something like that on the grill, sleep, do it all over again. And one of the comments I had when we had kind of talked about that was, somebody was like, well, yeah, that's what hunting is. And I totally agree with that. I think that's spot on comment. I wholeheartedly agree. That is hunting. But it's different when you do this many days. I mean, this is, today was day 86 for me this season. 86 just waterfowl hunting. That's not my big game, my archery. That's not any upland days. That is just waterfowl. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't ready for it to be over. Because when you grind this hard for this long, it naturally wears on you. It does. But if I didn't genuinely love this, I wouldn't be out there every day continuing to do this. And then you add in the dog aspect of it, and I had Brock out with me tonight, and the dude just genuinely loved every single second of being there. He was engaged, he was happy. You can just watch his body language and how happy he is. And so there are a lot of factors with it for me, but I just wanted to clarify that, because once in a while people kind of raise their eyebrow when I'm like, yeah, I'm ready for duck season to be done, because it's almost interpreted as it comes across like I don't enjoy it. I do. I love every second of it, and I know the first day I can't go out, I'm going to be wishing it was duck season again, and I've got 8 more months to wait until it's here. But but it is just different. It is different when you do it at this number of days in a season.
Yeah, it can definitely wear on you. I haven't quite done it as many days as you have, but I think I'm over 60 the last time I checked, and it's just it can be a grind, especially when you're on the road. And a lot of these trips you're bringing multiple dogs, so you got the dogs to take care of. Then you're doing a little training, and then like you said, go back out and scout, and come back and take care of the dogs. Just throw a little bit of food, whatever it is. Heck, we've been eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for lunch.
Right.
So it's just quick and easy, and there's not a whole lot of time to do a bunch of extracurricular stuff. So it's a lot of fun. Like you said, there's times where it's not that you get burnt out. It's just that you're just wore out, and your body just needs a rest, and mentally, sometimes you just need to, to get back in the swing of things, and that off season lets you do that. But it's usually the first week after season goes out, for me at least. I'm like, man, I wish I was getting up again and going at it. So, but a lot of that is for the dogs. I love to do it, but there's nothing better than watching the dogs, and these last couple hunts, watching Clyde, and watching Brock, and now Solo, and Strike and Bud. It's just those dogs. Just that's what they're born to do, and that's what they love to do. And so now it gets into the off season, and keep that training going and keep them tuned up and have them prepared for next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned that I never talk about is the travel. And there's a lot of travel that goes into this. Yep. We were, I think 15 hours to Montana one way. We're 14 hours here one way, not considering Missouri and Oklahoma and Kansas and North Dakota and everywhere else that we went. There's a lot of travel. So you really look at those, whatever I said today was for me, I think it was 86. Well, now you got to add all the travel days, on there. And then the traveling with dogs. And I love my dogs to death, but traveling with dogs is just not fun, because you have to stop so much more, and you have to have all this extra time with airing them out. And then, heaven forbid, you get caught in some kind of weather to where now all of a sudden you need to have a hotel. Well, now how is our hotel is pet friendly? Because I'm not leaving dogs in a trailer or the back of my truck outside in a place I don't know, in a parking lot of a hotel, right? So I'm bringing the dogs in. So now I got to find the right hotel, and then once I get the right hotel, how do I bring them? It's just like it's a lot. It's a lot, and I feel like we're kind of hitting some of the low points here, but we have had some fantastic hunts. Especially this last month. I mean, really reflect on the whole season. One of my favorite early season trips we had was North Dakota opener. I mean, it was awesome, not only from a dog standpoint and a bird standpoint, but the people.
Huh, yeah.
I mean, that was awesome. To have, Travis and Marie, and how, they're just, they're great clients, become great friends. But then people that were on that hunt, we had first time duck hunters, really. And we had so many pintails that were finishing. I remember, there was one person there in particular that he got so used to seeing so many pintails and these big groups of pintails, we'd limit out on pintails right away, and then we can't shoot any. And of course, early season, they're all brown, hard to tell. When you're seasoned, you can tell. Right. But for someone new, they're ducks. And ducks. I remember that there was a group of mallards coming in, and we had like 8 big groups of pintails, that morning. All of a sudden, I just hear them like, "Oh, here come pintails!" I'm like, they're not pintails, So it's that kind of stuff is really fun for me, and I really enjoy that aspect of it. Completely adds something new to it, and a new energy. You bring somebody new into this. Joey, that was, to me, was one of the highlights of this whole season. Yeah. Take a kid that doesn't come from a hunting background, has never hunted before, only has the itch of this because he's been around the kennel. So we bring him down here, and that hunt that we finished that mega group in the woods, I mean, that kid's eyes lit up, and he's hooked. I mean, he's sending me messages while I'm down here now, being like, oh, I wish I could be down there. He's in the middle of basketball season, college basketball season right now. But it's just, that's the kind of stuff that makes this special to me. And we can talk about the retrieves, right? We can talk about, like, that one retrieve in North Dakota, the bronc was like 780 yards away or something like that is what we guessed. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I remember. Or Sola's first retrieve. Or, there are just so many highlights. One that sticks out in my head is a blind that Strike ran in North Dakota. That dude, he went, we figure is about 400-some yards. And then when he finally got to the bird got up and kind of like did that half takeoff. If you remember this one. And this honker stayed really low, like right in front of him for another few hundred yards before he was able to run that thing down. Those are what I remember. I don't remember how many birds we killed. I don't remember, the limits. I don't remember, that's not what I remember.
It's not important.
It's not important.
It's not important.
So it's just fun, this time of year, as much as we're trying to grind out these last few days, just being able to reflect on that. Like this afternoon, I was in the woods, just me and Brock. And those have turned into some of my favorite hunts because it just allows me to take a breath and just take everything in, where I am, why I'm here, why I love to do this. I don't care if I kill a bird or not. As a matter of fact, we didn't kill birds tonight. Now, this is the first day we've been skunked in quite a while, but we didn't kill anything. Right. And I couldn't care less. I really couldn't. Yep. And so it's just kind of, when you talk about real, like, that's real.
Yep. Yeah, the first morning, I think it was, when we got into the woods, and you had went out the night before, and you broke ice, and because it had been really cold down here, and you broke ice, and there was birds all over the place down there, and you were super excited when you got back, and all the birds that you'd seen, and we get there the next morning, and of course it froze back over, so we had to break ice walking back out and breaking ice in the hole again. And man, it was just sitting there in darkness before everything woke up. It was just so peaceful. And that's what it's all about. It's just sometimes there's so much going on in the world today, and your mind's going every which direction. And when you sit in the duck woods, I'm not a deer hunter, so I'm sure it's the same thing as a deer stand. It just by yourself, and you're hearing nothing but nature. It's just peaceful. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how people in the city can live by honks and crowds and beeping and all this other stuff, because there's no other way I'd rather live, than being in the outdoors. So it's interesting. It's been quite the trip. We've had some freezing cold temperatures, and then it warmed up, and we hunted a field yesterday, and it was full of ducks, but then again it froze back over. And then when we got there, we misjudged where we were going to set up, so to speak. When the light came up, we had open spot that was another 75 yards down from where we initially had set up. We just didn't see in the dark, even with flashlights. It was hard to tell, and so made the move, and it paid off for us. And it was a fun little hunt, just you and I, and took 3 dogs and let the 3 dogs do their thing, and it was a lot of fun.
It's funny you bring up, I want to go back to that first hunt, because I was talking to Dennis, a friend of both of ours, works at Sitka, great guy. We actually have, he has a bud puppy. We have her with us, and he had asked about that hunt. And that hunt, let's just go over that hunt real quick, because it was really fun for me. So I love scouting. I love that part of the hunt. I think it's obviously a huge part of it. But there's something to me about when I find where they want to be, it's like that I gotcha moment. Like I love that part of it. And so I went back in the woods, and we have a woods that is a private woods. It's just a woods that we lease. It's nothing crazy. You think about a leased woods, you're probably thinking of White Oaks or Coca-Cola, or it's not that. We're lucky to have it, but it's not that. But we have access to a very large WMA right off of our woods, and it's not, the water doesn't ever get deep enough. It's completely dictated on the flow of the river. It never seems to quite get deep enough to be able to get a boat back there and kind of maneuver, so it's always on foot, which is totally fine because I would prefer that people can't get back to us with the boat, from the public. So I went back there and I was, really trying to find where these birds wanted to be, and I was breaking ice and breaking ice and breaking ice. And the thought process I had was, as I got closer to the river, like everybody's pounding the river, right? Because everything else is frozen. It's the only open water. So all these ducks that are here concentrate on the river because it's the only place for them to sit on water. And so my theory was if I just kept moving towards the river, eventually I would hit a pocket where some current had been moving. It would keep things open, and I'd be able to find where birds were. And I was dang near just about to turn back because, man, like if you walk, a mile breaking ice, it feels like you just walked 10. It's like it's high knees. It's banging pressure down every step. If you've done it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. My shins were just screaming, and I stood there for a second. Off in the distance, I just heard. I was like, oh. So I'm like, well, I'll keep moseying that way. Stop, wait, listen for a while. Nothing. Okay, so I keep going. Well, sure enough, I start seeing birds drop in and, found the X, right? Or found where they wanted to be. The next morning, so I tried to, the best I could, kind of blaze a path back so that we had, a clear path to walk in the next morning. And it didn't turn out that way. It froze back in, and it was just as more difficult because we're carrying all the gear, we're carrying our decoys, we're carrying like everything that we need. Brett's got his camera gear. I mean, we had a lot of stuff.
2 dog stands.
Oh yeah, 2 dog stands, 2 dogs. 2 dogs. Right? I mean, it's just it was to the point that when we finally got there, Brett and I looked at each other with that look of, screw this. I mean, it was just like, we're sweating, we're tired, but we knew that if we got there, it was going to be good. And it was great. But what was neat about that to me is, totally agree with you. Like that morning, for whatever reason, we had that extra time to kind of enjoy that, peaceful dark, right? And then, those whistling wings that you really can't see the birds yet, but they're there. They're kind of, over the decoys, and all of a sudden, it's just like, you that's why you do it,
yep.
Right? I mean, it really is.
Yep. And
so anyways, after all that, our buddy Dennis from Sitka, we actually talked tonight, and he was just kind of asking about, the hunts, and he had heard a little bit of this story, because I keep up on the Riverstone Kennels Instagram or Facebook stories, just kind of keeping up so people can keep up with what we're doing. And Dennis was like, man, like, you realize like no one else in Arkansas did that, to kill ducks. And he's not right, because I'm sure there are other people there. But the point was that like that's not the easy way to do this, right? That's not the easy way would have been to sleep in and say everything's frozen, so we're not going, right? But one, that's not our style, and 2, like we just love to do this. And so I really didn't think of it until he brought it up that way tonight. And I was like, I hadn't really thought of it, right? Because, like, I'm not watching other people's bobbers. Like, whatever they're doing is what they're doing, right? I'm going to do us, right? And I know what we're going to do is we're going to scout. We're going to find the X, or as close as we can to it. We're going to get on it. We're going to set up. We're going to have as successful as a hunt as possible, more for the dog's sake than anything else, because I quite frankly don't, like the pulling the trigger, I've talked about this on here before, is anticlimactic for me, is the best way I can put it. It's a means to an end, because I want those dogs, to get those retrieves. But at the same time, I don't want to shy away from the fact that, like, that's why we're there, right? Like, that's what we do. We kill birds on these hunts. Just the reality of it, right? Yep. So I'm not trying to shy away from that, but I am trying to really shine the light on the why. Like, I'm a big why guy. Doesn't matter if it's in, dog training. Doesn't matter if it's in, my business. Like, I'm a big why guy. If somebody comes to me with an idea, with a problem, with like, why? Like, ask yourself why. If you can honestly assess why, it will likely give you the answer of whatever it is you're searching for, right? The why for us is the memories. Like, that's why.
100%.
You know, I mean, that's why we're doing this. So, but it's just kind of funny. I never thought of the hunt that we did. Like, it's just what we do, but I never thought of it like that.
Right. Yeah. I do know, just back up just a little bit, there's a Drake pintail that got shot yesterday that probably thinks a little different about your whole shooting thing.
I do love pulling the trigger on pintails, that's for sure.
So just to get the story, so we set up yesterday on this field, and we had I didn't really shoot a whole lot. I was taking some photos and doing some other things, working my dog Timber, and so finally I sit down next to a tree on this little dike, and first thing comes across is a wood duck. Well, I like to wait until they're like almost picture perfect to shoot. Josh has other ideas. So anyhow, this wood duck gets shot. I may have missed the first time, and we both shot simultaneously the second time, so you know how that goes. It's a coin flip. But then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, there's a single coming, out high over, out in front of us, and starts whiffling down. I'm like, oh, man, this is going to do the whole thing, and it's a Drake pintail. And no more than I put my gun to my shoulder, kaboom, splash. I'm like, huh, thanks, Miller.
Wasn't going to let him get out of there.
Well, he wasn't going to get out of there. I was just letting it finish.
Oh, gosh. It's, again, dude, that's why we do this.
That's the memories.
Right? Like
we'll talk about
right
that
here.
We'll talk about that forever. Yeah. It's today's day and age, and I've been hunting for 30 plus years. And, I went through my phase of wanting to stack piles and wanting to do this and wanting to just, kill as many as you can. And obviously with social media nowadays, it's very easy to display that and to show everybody that you are killing them. I've been on some really good hunts. Actually, I got a picture on my phone that I was going to put on social media. I'm just not a pile pick guy. Used to be, not anymore. It doesn't matter to me. I've got kids that love to hunt. I don't care if they pulled the trigger 2 times, 3 times, and now, with hunting timber, there's a lot of times, I'm going to say 90% of the time, and with taking photos, I don't even pull my gun out of the case. And, so for me, watching my kids shoot, watching my dog, make retrieves, just being in the moment, that is more important to me than killing a pile of birds. Yes, it's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's a good time. But the older you get, the more appreciative I think you are of the situation that you're in. And you're in the now, and you're not worried about, oh my gosh, if I don't kill 50 birds today, I can't put it on social media and everybody's going to think that I'm a nobody. What's the matter? Just go out, do your thing, have fun, and make some memories. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a hot button topic for me because I am the opposite of a pile pick guy, and so nothing wrong with it. If it's your thing, I'm not bashing on it. Maybe I am. Okay, I'll be honest. I'm a little bit, because I think it is what's wrong with the waterfowl industry. Again, if that's how you base your success, and that is you're just trying to flaunt it in front of the other people and say, like, look, we're better than you are, kind of thing, and it happens. That's what frustrates me, because we're in this together. Like, I want new people to get into waterfowling. I want new people to love to do this. I want new people to want to get their kids into this. And sometimes it makes people back off on, I'm not being that successful, right? Or you know what, I'm not going to go down it because I'm going to spiral out of control if I do this. But the biggest reason why, now, just to clarify, I have no problem with you taking a photo to remember a hunt with your buddies. That is different.
For sure.
That is. But just social media has this different vibe to it, right? And so the reason that you never, if you go on the Riverstone Kennels page, again, I show all the stories. I had a question probably 3-4 days ago. And the question was, like, why don't you ever show what you're actually shooting? You know, and I sometimes you don't know how to take these messages, right? Like, okay, so are you saying that I'm being dishonest? Right? Like,
Right.
that's not it. Are you genuinely asking, right? Either way, I'm going to give you a genuine answer. And that genuine answer is, does it matter?
Right.
You know, like, you're seeing we're killing birds, right? Like, I try to do the best job that I can with videoing birds, you know, working and doing the whole deal. And if I have enough shooters, like we haven't this time, because it's either just me shooting because you're filming or taking photos, or just you and I, and we're trying to get these dogs some retrieve. Now, if there's 5-6 guys, then I probably aren't shooting at all. But why do I have to show you what we kill? Like, why do you need to see a pile? Why do you need to see the stringer, of birds? Like, why? You're seeing everything you need to see. You're seeing the birds work. You're seeing the communication. You're seeing the dogs go pick up. Like, you're seeing that it's happening. I just, like, you'll never see that with me. Yeah, unless something takes a hard left-hand turn that I'm not expecting, you just won't. And because I firmly believe that's not why we're there.
Right.
Right. So.
Well, I mean, I could go back being the old school guy because I'm old, but when I first started hunting, you could shoot one goose, and it was a blast. And I had a lot of good hunts with one goose. There was a lot of times that you'd set the decoys and then go park the tractor or the truck or whatever you used, and walk back out, and no more than load your gun, and a group of geese come in. You shot your one goose, and you went home, and you were ecstatic.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I live in Ohio, so now the limit's 5. So, yes, that makes the picture look better. Sure, the memory, yeah, man, I shot 3 in this group, I shot 1 in that, I whiffed in this. There can be memories out of it. But, now it's keeping people out longer. It's keeping, it's making the piles bigger. So, yeah, not to go down that path either, because everybody, has their own opinion about all of it. Yes, it's fun. But, it just I come from an age where, shot 1 goose and 3 ducks. And everybody was super happy with shooting that 1 goose and 3 ducks. 2 mallards, So I know guys on the East Coast are, can relate to that now, but it's changed, and social media, we could go down that path and we won't, but social media is you just look at any topic in the world today and it's driven by social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy for people to put themselves out there and be opinionated and all that stuff, and then everybody starts back and forth, and so it is what it is, and it's a great platform. Don't get me wrong. I've met a lot.
There's
of people.
a lot of great things.
There's
that come
a
out
lot
of
of
it too,
great
right?
things of it. Yeah, a lot of great things. So not bashing it by any means. It's just to me sometimes in the waterfowl industry, because I've gotten the same messages like, you don't kill anything. Like, well, you don't know. I mean, were you in the blind with me, or were you next to me, or what? So just because I'm not posting it on social media and displaying it, it's not my MO. I know what I did. I know what I did with my friends, and that's all that matters to me. So, but anyhow, so let's talk a little bit about Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
This is our second trip down, at least for me. I think this is your second trip too, right? Did you come down one time? Oh no, you came down between at opening weekend.
Yep.
With
So
your family.
I've been down 3 times
That's
this
right.
year. Yep.
Yeah. So this is my second time down for the hunt with Joey, and then this trip.
Mm-hmm.
But how long have you been coming down? Not just to this particular place, but Arkansas in general.
So I think I've been coming down here for 6 years. I think 6 years. And what's so funny about that is looking back and reflecting, because coming from a family that I wouldn't call a waterfowl family, this was my dream, just to be able to hunt here. Like, it was a bucket list thing for me. If I could go hunt Arkansas, right? Because as a kid, I'm watching the R&T, DVDs and, seeing the videos and seeing the mallards, come through the timber. I remember we had up at my grandpa's cabin, we had this little, like I call it a wood duck pond, but it's like a little beaver dam backed up slough. And once in a while we'd shoot wood ducks there. I can't tell you the number of times I went down there, set up decoys and sat, because it was, to me, I was hunting in the timber, right? And very rarely did I kill anything. I might have killed a couple of wood ducks one time, but not very often. But to me, that's like the allure of watching birds come through the trees. Like, it was completely foreign to me. It was something I wanted to experience in the worst way. And so I remember the first time I came down here, hunted public, not great experiences, just because, I'd say there's a lot of competitiveness naturally in waterfowling, which is one of the things I truly dislike about it. But there was a lot of that, and I'm a young kid by myself. I didn't know where I was, didn't know how to do this thing. And then I got hooked up with a couple people that were able to kind of, show me how to hunt, down here, how different it is. Something as crazy as up in Wisconsin, like, actually I'd say anywhere up north. When you think of a ducky day, you think like snow or like cloudy, drizzly rain, windy, just like nasty, right? Well, down here, there's a lot of people that won't even go out unless it's completely bluebird, sunshine. And that was completely foreign to me. So I had, one of the guys who was kind of showing me, the ropes. Like, I was like dying to ask that, but I didn't want to sound foolish. And so for a while, I just kind of held it in. And so finally, I was just like, man, like, why do you guys do that? Like, why do you say that? Like, you need sunshine. And he's like, well, think about it. By the time birds get here, the way that he put it, I thought was hilarious. By the time birds get here, they've got PhDs, right? Because they've been educated the whole way down, shot it, every step of the way. So sunshine, what that does is it blinds them to an extent, right? Because they can't wear sunglasses. That was the way he put it. They don't have sunglasses on. So if they've got a bright sun in their face, bright sun shining off the water, they just can't evaluate like they can on a cloudy day. They can see every detail. They can see everything. If you're not hidden perfectly, if you move, they pick that stuff out. Plus, spinners that they've seen, literally the entire trip down, right? And every time they've seen them, they've been shot at, and decoy setups, right? Like, how many J hooks or U's can one duck see before they start going, well, I'm not doing that, right? They just see everything so much better. So it was really a learning curve for me. And then I got in my first club, and I remember when I got in that club, the idea was I was able to get on private ground and can hunt my dogs, right? And it just didn't work out like I was hoping it was going to.
Was this Easton at the time?
No, this was actually, I had just lost Easton. Easton never got to hunt Arkansas, which is one of the things that I regret. So the first time that I came down here, Easton was probably, he was alive, but he was retired. He got to a point where his injury that he had a bad injury that he had to basically have a reconstructive knee when he was like, I think it was 2 or maybe 1.5 even. And so naturally over another 10, 11 years, gets very arthritic. He just had a hard time, so he'd never got to make the trip down. But I think that first year was probably me and Sage. I think probably me and Sage. If I were to guess, I can't remember. That's kind of sad. I can't remember. But anyway, get in this first club, and now this first club was the first year I had Brock. This is Brock's first hunting season, and so as I go in that first season, with Brock, I'm learning what it's all about to be a part of this club. And what I'm learning is that I don't really like it a whole lot. And the reason I don't really like it a whole lot is because Like, I feel like I feel like I'm a good hunter. I hesitate saying that just because I don't want to sound arrogant, but I do. I hunt a lot. I hunt a lot of different environments, different states, different everything. And naturally, when you get into a club, you've got all these people, you've got all these opinions, you've got all these, everybody wants to have their say. And it's like, there was one guy in particular that's like every single day, every night was like, this is where we're going, this is what's going to happen, this is what we're going to do, we're going to crush them here. Okay? Every single day we'd go out and it wouldn't be that. There was always 100 different excuses. And you hear enough, it's like, okay. Like, and not only that, but like on that farm, like I had to manage the water. I had to make sure the blind was right. I had to make sure all this stuff was there. So then if stuff didn't work out, it was like, oh, well, there should be more, and everybody's got opinions, right? And it's like, it just wore on me, you know? And so I got out of that and got the cabin we have now. And I really like it. It's in a different area. I'd say not as good of an area. That's my only knock on it. Is I feel like we're not as good of a duck area, but we still do really well, you know? So I've got a private woods, and the way I got this woods was actually really neat. So the people who we bought this house from, they had a woods lease. And so when I bought the house, I told them, I just need you to introduce me to who this person is, because they're not going to lease anymore. And actually how I got this house, let me back up one further. I bought this house because of a dog trailer. So I had a dog trailer that I had bought, my 10-hole trailer. I've been looking for a 10-hole forever. And I finally found one in South Carolina. Well, I'm not driving from Wisconsin to South Carolina to pick up a dog trailer. So through our conversations, the guy's like, hey, you hunt in Arkansas, I hunt in Arkansas. So if you just wait a month, I'll bring it to you. Great. Send the money. Trust the guy is going to bring it. And time comes to bring it, like 2 days before. He calls me like, hey, he's like, birds just aren't there, which they weren't. It was a really bad year. But, yeah, I'm just not going to come. I'm like, well, how is the trailer going to get here? Because you've now gotten paid. I need to get that trailer, right? So long story short, he finds a buddy that is going to drive it out because he's going out to his duck club. So we meet this guy. Were you with me, actually? No?
I don't think I was with you.
Okay. Somebody was with me. I can't remember who it was. Somebody was with me. Guy comes with a trailer. We're just small talking. I'm like, so what are you guys doing? How's the season going? He's like, man, I'm just coming to clean up my cabin. I'm going to sell it. And I was like, oh, well, and at the time I had clients that were looking for a lease. I was like, well, send me photos. Maybe it'd fit for one of my clients. So he sends me, not sends me. We're standing right there, and he's like showing me photos. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is nice, And he's like, yeah. He's like, one of our members, his family owns a big, lumber company, so all the woods, straight from there, and like they did a really nice job with it. It's small, right? But they did a really nice job with it, I thought. And at the time, our house was not nice. I mean, what sealed it for me was we're having dinner, and
I was on this trip.
Okay, this was what sealed me out. I'm out of this lease, or I'm out of this club. We're having dinner, and at night it always sounded like mice were like having stock car races in the ceiling. I mean, it was just like running all over. It was disgusting. And I'm eating dinner, and I don't know why, but I noticed my napkin just waving, just waiting, just naturally from the vent, and the air's moving, just wave, whatever. So I eat and finish my food, and I get done, and you kind of finish my meal. I kind of lean back, and when I lean back, I look up at that vent, and I see a dead, rotting mouse carcass laying through the grate, legs and tail hanging down, and I'm watching that, and I look down, and my napkin on my plate still waving. I'm like, I'm out. I am out. I'm done with this. Not happening. So at the time, I was really wanting a nicer house, and this is, I think, a very nice house, especially for a duck camp. So
it's perfect.
I think it is. I think it is. It's got the dog room. It's got the the lockers. It's got everything that you need, right? You don't need anything luxurious, but you want to be comfortable.
For sure.
And so anyways, that's how we bought this house. Now that I have the house, I tell them, yeah, I really need you to hook me up with just the guy that has the lease, because obviously he's going to lease it to somebody else. So his name's Sonny, and so I meet up with him, and he doesn't know me from Adam, and I'm trying like crazy. So I come down and close on the house, send him messages being like, hey, would love to meet. This was beforehand. Love to meet you when I come down. Love to talk to you about the lease. Love to talk to you about all the stuff. Yep, great. Let's do that. So I get down here, send him messages. Yep, we'll meet up tomorrow after the closing. Close in the morning. And this is my only day that I'm here, right? So, or I'm sorry, there's one more day. And so I send a message. I'm like, hey, what time would you like to meet? No response. Call him. No response. Send him another text. Hey, happy to meet anytime. No response. Okay. So later that night, he texts me. He's like, hey, really sorry. Got tied up with some stuff. Let's do it tomorrow morning. Okay. So I'm like, you tell me when and where, and I'll be there. So he's like, drops me a pin, be here at 9 o'clock. So I'm there at 8:30. He doesn't get there until almost 10. I'm sitting in this like little old abandoned church parking lot. I've got my little rental car here because I flew down for the closing. And I mean, like, you're hearing banjos play kind of thing. So I'm like, what in the world? So he pulls up, super nice guy. He's like, hey, I'm really sorry. Got a lot of stuff I got to be doing today. You're like, you can ride if you want to, or, we can just, text and figure stuff out. Well, that's not how relationships are done, right? Like, you're not going to build a relationship with someone over text message. So I'm like, yeah, all right. So I hop in his truck. We bounced around. We went to his chicken farm and moved chickens. We went and fed pigs and cows. We went and fixed a hydraulic hose on a backhoe. We fixed gates. We fixed fences. Like, we did literally all day. And it was dark by the time he came back and dropped me off that night.
Did he buy you lunch?
We didn't even eat lunch. And we were so busy the whole time, like it went by really fast. And it's stuff that it was new. It was new kind of fun stuff for me, right? Like, I'd never moved chickens before, like it was kind of interesting, I just thought the whole thing was really interesting. Well, we get done, and there was, for privacy's sake, I'm not going to say the dollar amount, but there was a dollar amount that this is what this lease was going to cost. So we pull up. And again, he's dropping me back off of my rental car. Pulls up, shuts the truck off, and he's like just like staring at his steering wheel. I have no idea what he's doing, right? And so I'm like, well, just thanks for the day. And he's like, quiet. He turns to me and he says a number. The number was half of what it was supposed to be.
Wow.
And I'm like, excuse me? He says a number again. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, Josh, I can't pay somebody to go do what you did with me all day today. And I just really appreciate it. So that's what I want to give you that wood's for. Like,
that's awesome.
You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
Like that's the kind of stuff that, like, most people don't take the time to build that relationship.
Yep.
And to this day, like, he and I stay very in touch. Like, we not only, obviously during duck season on down here, but his son was going through a heart situation. He was having to have surgeries. Obviously, I can't imagine, what not only the kid but the family was going through. So I was texting him on a regular basis saying, hey, I'm praying for you guys. I want you guys to know that, we're thinking about you and praying for you. It's a big deal to us. We wish you guys nothing but the best. And he was kind of keeping me in the loop on stuff. Like, he's just a genuinely good person. Yeah, I would never know that. Like, in my eyes, it would have been a dollar for dollar. I give you a check for being able to hunt there. I don't know you. It's just different. And so that's one of the things I really enjoy about down here is I feel like it's more than just we're hunting. Just like the networks and relationships. And we have not Joey, who we talked about before. There's another kid named Joey and his buddy Nick that Like, they've gotten to be great friends of ours, and they let us hunt, their farms, and they take us on hunts of their own, and we spec hunt with them, and we duck hunt with them, and like, again, it's not about what we kill,
Right.
but those relationships are so big. And so this has been a really fun camp for that. But what it does for me is it gives me the privacy to hunt my dogs like I want them to, and I'll tell a quick story of the old lease, because this was kind of somewhat comical. So the old lease, like, one of the last hunts that I had there was a complete mess. So this was Bud's first hunting season. So maybe I was wrong by saying it was Brock's first season, but it was for sure Bud's first season. So Bud's first season, we're down there, and the kid is crushing it. Like, he's just like, he's hammering on it. He's like hitting on all cylinders. He's making big long blinds. His training is certainly carrying over into hunting. I could not be more proud of this dog. And we're kind of getting towards the end of the season, and this is the way that this club worked out. That somebody showed up, they were gonna hunt. Well, of course, they were gonna hunt with us, right? Because we were the ones that, or for me, I was the one that was setting up and taking and scouting and doing all that stuff. So this guy pulls in. I've never met him before. He's been a part of this club the whole year. I've never met him before. So he rolls in. We kind of like meet him. He's got two buddies with. Great. And then that night you have dinner, go to bed pretty early, get up the next morning, and everyone's kind of zombie walking. And I remember I was at the coffee pot, and I was pouring my thermos full of coffee. This guy comes behind me. He's like, "Hey," he's like, "We're hunting my buddy's dog today." And I like perked up. I'm like, yeah. In my head, I'm like, well, that's why I'm here, So, okay. So I turn around. I'm like, well, we're hunting my dog. We can hunt him with your buddy's dog if you want. He's like, yep, that's what we're going to do. I'm like, well, hold on a second, though. Like, does he honor? Is he going to be respectful? Because this is a young dog of mine. I can't have any funny business going on. And I remember his response was, this dog's a field champion, blah, and starts going like through all of his credentials. And I'm like, okay. Like, that didn't answer my question. Like, it was pretty easy. Anyway, I let it go. We get in the side-by-side, drive over to the property where the field was, unload, and the dog did well on the walk, like under control, walked over there, and everybody's settled in the blind while I take the decoys out and set the decoys. And I just hear hollering from in the blind. I hear guns getting knocked over. I hear all this stuff, and I'm just like, what the heck's going on? Like, and I shine my light over to where Bud was, and Bud's still sitting there, quiet as can be. I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. That dog flared the first 7 groups because he was screaming. I mean, like, not whining, like, yeah, like screaming. And to the point that, like, we have birds like working close, and I am screaming on my call, just trying to drown out the noise of that dog. It was awful. Then they shot at a coot, even though I yelled coot, coot, coot. They shot. The dog takes off. They're running around with the decoys. They're trying to get this dog back. Well, Steve Snell, who owner of Gun Dog Supply, is sitting literally right next to me. And I feel like I'm a pretty patient person, but my patience is really starting to wear thin. I look over, and Steve is staring at me. And I know the look on his face is like, you need to say something. And I'm just like, oh, gosh. Well, then the next group was a big group of mallards, and the dog was actually kind of quiet. And I was like, hey, maybe like after the break, you ran around and calmed them down, whatever. So I'm working these birds, and all of a sudden, and they flare. And I'm like, I'm done. So I drop my call. I turn on the other end of the blind. I'm like, look, buddy, like, one of us is leaving, and I pay to be here, so it's not going to be me. And he got up and did the walk of shame all the way back. But that whole time, I was looking at Bud, who's my little all-star here, right? First season, crushing it, couldn't be more proud. And I'm sitting here with every bad habit possible going on the other end of the blind. And he never moved. He never whined. He never did anything. But he could have. And right then and there, I'm like, I got to do something different. Yep. Now, the mouse in the grate was like the nail in the coffin, but up to that point, yeah, it had to happen. And so it just, this place just gives me the privacy of just being me, just being able to hunt the way I want to hunt. My dogs, are always priority. It's a huge deal for me.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about anybody else and people that you don't know, and everything is pretty much under your control. And that just makes it easier, makes it a little more refreshing. And because sometimes when you get around people, just like you mentioned earlier, people are opinionated, different opinions, and sometimes those don't mesh, and personalities don't mesh, and you end up with just a situation that's supposed to be fun that's not fun. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, no, it's pretty cool. But couple points that I heard through that I just want to go back to is, number one, when after you spent the afternoon helping Sonny out, doing all his farm chores and doing all that fun stuff, that's a life lesson, right? I think there's a lot of times that people take for granted what the farmer allows us to do as hunters. Mm-hmm. Could it be not picking up trash or putting ruts in the field, or just doing things and not treating their property like it's our own. And for you to take that time to, I'm sure you were busy, had other things that could have been done, but you took the time, to help him do what he needed to get done to help build that relationship. It could be as little as, giving a farmer some fish at the end of the year, or ask them if they want a goose, that you shoot, just something to, help them out with. Because sometimes where I'm at, there's not leases. You can just go knock on doors, and I'm sure obviously that's the same for a lot of places. You just knock on doors and get permission and sign a permission slip, and hey, can I drive in the field? Do I have to walk in the field? No, go ahead, drive. Whatever. But just gotta people just take advantage of that sometimes, I think, and just as hunters, just to keep us on top. And we already have enough battles with people that are coming after us, from guns to other organizations that that don't like hunters in general. We're sometimes our worst enemy. And so I think it's just very important to that's a life lesson, just to help with that.
Well, and not only treat it like it's yours, but treat it like it's theirs.
For sure.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to me that that's not a normal thought, but it's not. We have a lot of people. So at home, hunting has gotten very competitive. We're very close to the Twin Cities. A lot of people, from Minnesota will come over because there's more opportunity, and all it takes is one person leaving trash out, one person not treating the property like it's theirs, and the farmer says, "I'm done."
Right.
And you know what? I can't blame them.
Yep.
Why would they? Why would they allow you to do that? That's a privilege, right? And the hard part is, someone like myself is sitting there going, "It wasn't me." And he's like, "Sorry, I'm not letting anybody."
You're categorized.
Yep.
You're in that group. That's unfortunate, but yeah. So the other thing that you had mentioned, and this is always a tough conversation, I think. Just because I've been in the guy that you hunted with in the last time, down at the last lease, I had a dog that was very vocal, and it is super embarrassing. And I didn't do my homework beforehand. You and I have had this conversation. I didn't do my homework beforehand. He's a great dog, and he's got more drive, and he's a big lover, but one of his biggest faults is he's a whiner. So I've had, you hear the comments, and then as a dog owner, I just think it's just as human nature in general, is you become defensive, right? And your first defense is, depending on your personality, your first defense is to make excuses. Well, he's not doing this, or he's done that, or, whatever. There's always an excuse. So, but, it's always hard, I think, for people to, not necessarily, especially guys that don't have dogs, but, to start those conversations of, all right, I'm totally cool with hunting with another dog, but, there's standards, and obviously, your standards are really high, and your dogs show that respect. So how's that conversation? How's a conversation like that usually go for you?
Yeah, it's a really tough one because, and quite frankly, it's one of the many reasons why this is just so much better of a situation for me, right? Because perhaps that dog was a great dog. The one I'm talking about that we had the bad experience at the last place, right? So he probably, to have the accomplishments he had to have been talented.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
But the reason I said that didn't answer my question when he was kind of listing off his accomplishments is because we later found out that dog had only hunted a couple times in his life. Now he was 7, but a lot of my friends that I campaign or compete with, right, whether it's field trials or hunt tests, they don't hunt their dogs.
Right.
So first off, how crazy is that?
Yep.
Right? Like, we're breeding hunting dogs, and we go and prove how great they are, and then we don't actually hunt them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because it'll mess them up for the game. Right? And now that's my opinion. I love testing. I love trialing. Right? But I also think that there's a lot in a live situation that you can learn about your dog, or your dog can show you either strengths or shortcomings based on the live setup. Like, when you're running the same cold setup over and over and over again, as you do in a test or you do in a trial, like it just, although they're very impressive, and I'm very proud of my dogs when they do what they're supposed to do, it is just different when you're actually hunting. So like that dog, he had never had that situation before, right? He's used to coming out of the truck, walking in the line, doing his job, walking back. Like, the early in the morning, the ATV ride, the getting in the blind, the anticipation, the excitement, me throwing decoys out in front, like, it was just too much for him,
right.
And so the conversation is a tough one because I think it's because the standard that I have, right? I believe I hold myself to a very high standard, and I'm trying to have all my dogs be the best that they can possibly be. On top of that, this is my job, and this is my business. For 99.9% of people I hunt with, this is their hobby. Like, this is what they're doing to escape their business. This is my business. And so when I'm out there, especially with a young dog, especially with a dog that I'm trying to give exposure to, if all of a sudden that dog is with the dog that is being vocal, that is breaking, that is not honoring, that's trying to steal birds, that whatever it is, it's probably more delicate of a situation with me than it would be in most situations, right? Like, you might be listening going, me and my buddy hunt all the time, and these dogs don't honor each other, but we get out 4 times here, we're going to be hunting our dogs, it's just a situation. Get it.
Right.
Totally cool. Right? Your expectations have to change, right? But if that's the situation, it's no different than you and I were talking. I think this is a great topic, and probably something I should just do a whole episode just about. But the family dog, right? When your dog is a part of your family, which I would honestly say 99% of them are now, at least the dogs that come from us, whether they're puppies or trained dogs, those dogs are living in the house. They're part of the family. But just like you talked about at home, the reality is that not everyone in the family is going to be on the same page, right? So you were talking about how your daughters are going like, oh, dude, don't make her sit on place for so long, right? Like, she's been on there enough, right? Want to come off, and like, you want to be training and you have certain things, but you're not there all the time, right? And you know that there's probably some spoiling going on, and you know what? That's great, right? It's why she's maybe not. Yeah, it is why she's there, right? She's a part of the family first, right?
For sure.
But expectations have to change a little, because you know that those things are going to come back at you while you're training or while you're hunting, right? And so it's an expectation thing. For me, my expectations are very high. And so normally what I'll try to do, like before I went in that club, I was adamant with the guy that was ahead of it, like my dogs need to be hunting. I have a very high standard. Like, I really want you guys to be okay with this, right? Because I knew that it was probably going to inconvenience some people, because if there were, only 2 dogs at a time were allowed hunting. So if all of a sudden there was a third person, for me to commit to this, I had to make sure that I was one of those too, right? Because a day that I can't bring my dogs hunting to me is a wasted day. So
it's a business.
It is.
You're down here for it's a business.
It's a reason, right? So it's a tough one. That's why I just try to avoid it. Right. Really,
yeah. Like I said, it just I know in my shoes, being in that guy's shoes at one point with my dog, it was embarrassing, and the first thing you do is you want to put that cape on and be macho, and my dog does this and my dog does that, but sometimes reality and what you're thinking doesn't, they're not the same. So it's just just an interesting because we ran into that the other day. Over here we had there was somebody that lost their dog, and the first thing they came up to said, well, he's got these amount of titles and the dog's lost, so it's just interesting.
We always try to we try to come up with, I think is called, for me, is looking at our dogs through rose-colored glasses, right? We all do it, right? I mean, our dogs all have shortcomings. They all have things that they shouldn't be doing. They're dogs. It's gonna happen.
Yep.
But we all love to cover that up with, like, the guy that you were talking about. Like, I mean, they were screaming and hollering and blowing the whistle and all this stuff. And you and I genuinely just went over there to help find the dog. Like, we don't want a dog to be lost. We don't want a dog to not be found, right? So we just want to help. The first thing that guy said, he's this and he's that and he's that. It's like, great. Well, that doesn't help us find him. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, let's find the dog.
Yep.
And but you're right. It was embarrassment, right? He was embarrassed the dog was lost and was immediately trying to validate that the dog was a good dog.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Like, yeah, it's really interesting.
Right. And that's why I just relate to that, because back in the day when I did some video and I was videoing a hunt, but I was running my dog at the same time, and my buddies gave him the name Chewbacca. And he literally, the dog was just, he was jacked up from point A to point B, and he would sit there when birds would work and just sounded like Chewbacca. And I'll never forget, I was filming, we were on a goose hunt, and that's when it really hit me. One of my buddies threw the microphone that thought that they couldn't hear me. Said, "Man, that dog's psycho," and it hurt.
Yeah.
And that's when
you could hear it in the mic.
I heard it.
They didn't know.
They had no idea that I heard it, and I could hear it through the mic. So and that hurts, because they are your pet, and you do spend a lot of time with them, and they're part of the family, and so it hurts. So you want to pump them up just like your kid. Oh, my kid's a star baseball player, and maybe he's not quite the star. So it's just it's just part of human nature. So, but all right, let's get back to.
But before you jump into that, okay. I need to cover our last two sponsors. So I'm trying to do the business side of this. So thank you to Gun Dog Supply. Gun Dog Supply is, it is your one-stop shop. Your one-stop shop for all your hunting and training needs. Rob Snell, who is one of the two owners, Steve Snell being the other one. Usually Rob and Steve are with us here at the end of season, and we're missing them. We're really missing them because we love having them here. But they're busy. They're working. They're getting all those orders shipped out to you guys. So go check them out, www.gundogsupply. They're great people, great company. You'll really enjoy them. And then Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck, the only 5-star crash test rated, both large, the only 5-star large. And then they also have an intermediate size. It's also 5-star crash test rated. It is the safest way for your 4-legged hunting partner to travel. We've gone round and round on this with a number of people that love to have the dog in the car with them, and my dogs will occasionally ride in the cab, but it is not the safest place for them to be. Being in that kennel, especially a crash test rated kennel like that, it is the safest place for that heaven forbid situation you get in an accident. So go check them out, www.luckyduck.com. Now you can go.
First of all, I just want to put a plug in for Gun Dog. I forgot something at home this week, and I put an order in quick, and they shipped it down here to camp, and we got the product in time and got to put it to use. So, but I do have one question, kind of off topic, to talk about real quick. Just talking about dogs riding in your cab,
Mm-hmm.
riding in the kennel versus riding in the kennel, right? So love my Lucky Duck kennels. I actually, just with timber, and I have a tonneau cover on my truck. So I actually, the intermediate kennel fits in the back seat of my F-150 like a glove.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually where timber travels, especially in the wintertime when it gets cold, because since I don't have a cab, the covers are great, but being in the truck cab itself, what's your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. So my dogs only ride in the cab really on one condition, and it is too cold. I shouldn't say one. Too cold out is really the one that I bring them in on. So when we were coming back from Montana,
Freezing.
it was like -15 or
Freezing.
-20 or something like that. Like you said, the kennel covers are great, but I'm not keeping the dogs back there for 14 hours in that condition, right? So they come in the cab. Then luckily we only had 2 and not 8 with us, because that would have been a cluster. But that, for me, that's why they come in. The only other times I've really had them ride in the cab is if I have an injury, or a dog that I want to be able to let stretch out versus being confined in that kennel. But really, look at a way that a dog, where a lot of times we think these dogs need these big kennels, they can get up and they can walk around, they can move. Like most of the time, they go in there and they curl up in a ball in the corner. Right, like they don't need all this room. Yeah. And actually, the safest thing for them to do is to go in and lay down. Because if they're up and they're walking around, they're moving, if you hit a big bump or you swerve or that's how a dog's going to get hurt.
For sure.
Right. So I actually like the kennels smaller than bigger. But that's when I bring them into the cab, is for that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just think about a compartment as yourself. If you get bounced, let's say in a 12-foot ceiling, you get bounced, you're going to go way up, right? Mm-hmm. And the farther up you go, the harder, the more it's going to hurt when you hit the ground. Mm-hmm. To where if you're in a smaller compartment, you go up, you don't hit as, you hit sooner and you don't fall as hard, it doesn't hurt as hard. Mm-hmm. So, but no, I just, I like to put my Lucky Duck kennel in the cab behind the driver's seat, and that's usually where Timber will go, unless obviously I've got a lot of things in it. She gets strapped down in the back, and mm-hmm. It's just, it's a little more convenient for me, because a lot of times I travel myself, or I just have one person with me, so then I don't have to worry about it. But anyhow, let's get back to hunting.
Right.
Arkansas. When you think of Arkansas, and I know this answer, but I want to hear it, mallards or speckle bellies?
Mallards. Yeah. Now, specks are a close second, because we don't shoot specks up as well. Actually, not only in Wisconsin, I'm trying to think, most places we hunt, we do kill them in Missouri, but we really, when I say we don't kill them, it's an odd thing for us to kill them in North Dakota. It's odd for us to kill them in Montana. It's odd for us to kill them really anywhere else that we hunt. But here, we actually go on speckle belly hunts. And I remember, so my grandpa, up at my cabin is my grandpa's cabin. We called it the cabin. But he had a speckle belly that was mounted, and it was kind of cupped from the ceiling, and it was probably the only speckle belly he ever killed, for all I know. But I remember sitting there looking at that thing like it was the coolest looking bird ever, and we never shot them. We never even saw them, right? So I think part of what I love about coming down here is the opportunity for that, because again, it just reminds me of the aspirational side of things. Like, simply coming and hunting here was so aspirational to me for so long that I still get lost in it. Like today, it's just me and Brock. We're standing in the woods. Not much going on. But I had a very strong appreciation for where I was and what I was doing. And I think a lot of that just comes from, those years of dreaming.
Yeah, for sure. Now, obviously, Arkansas is known for mallards, right? I mean, obviously, Stuttgart sign says mallard capital or duck capital of the world. So, and the woods, mm-hmm. Mallards love to hang out in the woods, rice fields. But, I'm the same way, being from Ohio, sometimes just because mallard's such a generalized, waterfowl, that you take it for granted, we shoot them in Ohio, you shoot them in Canada, you shoot them everywhere, right? Speckle belly is the same way. In Ohio, we see some, but we don't see a lot. So it's interesting to come down here and see all these big feeds of speckle bellies and get on a good speckle belly hunt. But it's just, I'm a mallard purist. I would rather hunt mallards any day of the week, over anything. And I'm a goose caller, so it's just watching them things either through the timber or even on big water, because I hunt big water at home. Just having them things finishing the decoys, it's there's nothing better.
Yeah, you do take mallard for granted if you've never shot other things, right? So for the longest time, the big bull, no, not even big, a bull pintail was my unicorn. Like, I could not kill a bull to save my life. And I went years of that and years of hunting in situations that I could kill him. I couldn't get him to finish. If, like, there were multiple times that they were shot in our group, but I didn't shoot. Right. So I knew I didn't kill it, right? And it was just like I could not get that done.
Yep.
But now in the last few years, I've killed a lot of them. I still love them. I still think they're the prettiest duck.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, they are just gorgeous. I love the way they move. I love the way they look. I love, like, that. They just have such a unique. They're just unique. Yeah, they're just very unique. Right?
I love the way they taste.
Well, that's another piece of it. But you kind of go through, like, for me, in Wisconsin we shot mallards and we shot wood ducks. That was it.
Right.
So then when I started hunting new places and you start hunting, like, teal, like, we really never killed teal. So teal are super fun. Like, the big groups coming at Mach 5, like, that's awesome, right? And then you start getting into gadwalls that are a very plain duck, right? But talk much differently. They have a different movement to them, right? Like, You start appreciating that. And then all of a sudden you start getting into, like, pintails to me was like, the ultimate peak of that. But speckle bellies, snow geese, right? Like, they each have their own uniqueness about them. But once you've run that gauntlet and you've gone through the whole thing, I think most people come back to mallards.
Right.
There's just something about those mallards, especially in the woods.
Yep.
Like the woods, the best way that I can describe it, I've talked about this a lot, is it's intimate. You see those birds do things that you wouldn't normally see when they're out in the field away from you, or if you're pass shooting, or, I mean, they're literally right on top of you. I mean, one of my favorite moment of this year was opening week down here in Arkansas. I had two of my brothers come down. My dad had COVID, so he couldn't come. But Zach, who had been down the year before, which was a very, very poor year, like really, really poor. And then Luke, who he just hasn't had the opportunity to duck hunt much. So they came down, and they're both younger than I am. I think Zach's 2 years younger than me, and Luke's 4 years younger than me. So we went out, and I shot my 6 teal opening day. Never saw a mallard. Shot my birds, got out of there. Monsooned on Sunday, so we didn't go out. They came in Sunday night. We went out Monday. I can't tell you how many birds, mallards, were in the hole swimming around us before legal. To the point that the three of us are literally laughing out loud because we can't hold it in, right? It was, if you've been there, you know exactly the feeling I'm talking about.
Yep.
And by far my favorite moment of the year. Yep. By far. Had nothing to do with pulling the trigger, just being there in the moment. Now, from a dog perspective, like, I would have loved to get video of this, right? But, like, I look over, Brock was with us. Brock is literally watching a mallard swim around his stand. Like, he's like sitting there looking at it, like he's being calm, he's quiet, he's not moving, right? But this bird is literally swimming around him, and you don't realize how loud they are, right? Like, when they're sitting on the water right next to you, it's like, meh, 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 like, and they're loud, right? And, like, the way they move and the way they preen themselves and the way that, like, there's just so much to it. And just that dance, that back and forth dance that they do coming through the trees. It's there's just nothing like it.
Yeah. I made the comment, I think, our first morning in the woods is just some of them Drake mallards just sounded like they were just deep and whistle compared to some of, and just that woods just amplifies,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I know that couple nights ago when we were scouting, I about had that Drake Mallard sit on my head, walking down the channel there. Holy cow! I about had to duck, to get out of the way. But it's something, obviously in Ohio where I'm at, we just we don't experience what it is down here, and it's a cool experience. So let's talk a little bit about. I'm curious on what you think is the most important part of a hunt. Not only down here, well, mostly down here, but because in timber, and we came down spec hunted. The last time we were down here with Joey and set up in some 2x4 blinds, on an edge, and obviously the timber, and let's. I want to know what your thoughts are, on what the most important part of the hunt. If it's a water motion, or is it? And let's start specifically in the timber.
So, I have to say that the dog is the most important part of the hunt, right? Like
course.
that's it's got to be.
Yes.
But after the dog, okay, the hunt itself, I think is the least important part. The scout is, to me, the most important, right? Now, here's the other part that's very unique about down here, is that unless you're going on public, or unless you have a couple farmers that you have permission on that have big tracks, it's not like at home. It's not like in a lot of places where you can drive, you can scout, you can knock on a door, you can get permission, you can hunt, right? Everything down here is money. And so everything's leased up. You don't have that option. And so what it does, and this is one of the reasons I love hunting new places, each place challenges you with a new set of hurdles that you as a hunter need to figure out how to overcome to be successful, right? That jacks me up, because this is not just, this is how you do this, right? Like, you have to first, the first thing is put your ego aside, because all the time, there's like, people from down south will come up and hunt with me up north, or people, buddies of mine up north come down here and hunt down here. It is different. Like, put your ego aside. You don't know what it's like down here. Learn something, right? Or vice versa. I love that part of it. But down here, because like we scout, right? Now we've worked hard at learning areas where there's public property or whatnot, on how to scout and where to go and how to be successful with that. But if you just have a spot and you're running traffic, now things get really interesting, because you can no longer get on the X. Now you're trying to pull birds, and pull educated birds besides. For me, water motion is huge. All right, water motion is huge because it adds that realism that you just can't have, with, like, spinners are great until you get educated birds that have seen them, 1,000 times, and now all of a sudden they're flaring off the spinners, and you got to try to read that and pull them, right? I love setting up in ways that most people don't, and I love trying to be different, right? So it could be as much as the way you hook up the decoys, right? So everybody hooks the decoys up in the front of the keel. So whatever, like if there's a current, all those decoys are going to be pointed the same direction, right? Well, that's not normal, right? Look at a group of ducks, they're not all sitting in the same direction in a line, right? So hook some up from the back. Now all of a sudden, it looks like they're swimming back and forth, right? Try something different. Don't do the same U. Don't do the same pocket. Don't do the same circle. Don't do the same J hook. Don't do the same thing all the time, and just expect that this is how this works, right? Different. I think that's one thing I always go back to, is how can I be different, right? So if everybody's shooting them in big holes, like, let's go to skinny timber, right? Like, try to suck them down right through the trees. Yeah, just trying to be different, I think, is a big part of being successful, at least down here.
Yeah, 100%. I think you hit it with your very first point with scouting. That's obviously the number one, especially when you're hunting public. Not for just location of birds. The other thing that I think that people take for granted is, what are those birds doing? Like you were talking about different ways of setting up. I mean, yeah, okay, you found a big bunch of birds, but what are they doing? How do they look? Are they feeding? Are they are there a bunch of wings flapping? Different ways. So there's a lot that the waterfowl, the ducks, geese, whatever it is, will teach you on that scouting trip. And sometimes you can't get to that X. Okay, so where are they coming from? What's the wind direction supposed to be? So there's a lot of important things that goes on in the very first point that you hit, and that was scouting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the next part to me is the hide.
For sure.
The hide has to be number two. And one of the things that's really interesting to me about the hide is how many factors go into it, right? It's not just brushing your blind in. It's not just where you put it. Like, one thing that I'm big on is shadows. Like, if the sun is directly at your back, your front of the blind is a black brick to anything coming towards you. Doesn't matter how good you're brushed in. Doesn't matter where your hide is. It is a black brick. Mm-hmm. If your sun is directly behind you and you're silhouetted, right? Like if you're against a wood line or something like that, it's different. Stuff that you don't think about, right? Because you're not out there looking at it. But a duck, especially an educated duck or a goose, or especially the more eyeballs, the worse, right?
Yep.
But the hide, and the bigger the group, the harder the hide, right? And so it's so interesting to me because waterfowl are imprinted birds, right? We know that. So as an imprinted bird, naturally you learn things, right? So I remember when I was high school-ish, high school, we hunted out of layouts. That was all we did. We went in the middle of the field in a layout, and we'd shoot them in the middle fields. I can't remember the last time I laid in a layout because we've been hunting in 2x4s on edges, and now we're sucking these birds to the edges, right? I believe one of the reasons we're successful with that is because for years, birds learned if I'm in the middle of the field, I'm probably getting shot at, right? So now all of a sudden these birds, to be safe or doing something different, they go to the edges. Well, now they're getting shot like crazy on the edges. I believe 5 years from now, we're going to have to go back to layouts and be in the middle, right? I just think this evolution is going to continue to go on because these birds are smart. And how crazy is it that the genetics, right? So we talk about genetics in dogs all the time, but the genetics in birds and the imprinting, here's how crazy it is. So I shot a banded honker. This was last year. This bird was 13 years old. I killed that bird in the same, I was 2 miles from the town that it was banded in. Okay. So that means that bird lived his entire life there, which is pretty hard to believe because there's just not a whole lot of year-round resident Canadas in Wisconsin because of how cold it gets, unless you have somewhere that has open water, right? But there's just not a lot of that, especially with where I was. So you would have to assume this bird made a migration and came back to the same town every year of his life. That's incredible. Yep. Incredible. And so, just again, I'm just kind of going on like the how amazing these birds are, and they figure this stuff out. Yeah. So the hide, they learn what to look for.
I love talking to, like, on Instagram, some of the old school guys because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm old and I'm old school. So it's funny, like back in the day, one of the leases that I was on as a kid, we had a wooden box blind out in the middle of a cornfield. And all we did was the farmer would either leave some rows up and you would put there was 4 or 5 rows left up. You'd put that box blind in those rows, or sometimes the farmer took down all the corn and it was just this box blind sitting in the middle of the field. And we smashed them. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was, of course, 1 and even in the 2 goose limits, smashed them. And, it's the sore thumb that's sticking out there. But one of the keys was, a lot of those were local geese, right? So that blind would get drug out there as soon as harvest would come off, and that blind was left out there all season long. So, the theories could go back and forth. Well, the geese got used to it, blah, blah, blah. Migrators coming in, they're not paying attention to it, blah, blah, blah. So, and then, we went from that to we actually had these full size, probably about the size of this kitchen table that you sat in that was made out of a canvas that was a goose. We had a sentry that probably, with the head, was probably 10 foot tall, and then had a big feeder. And you literally sat in front of it, and then the back of this goose had a little window. That's what you looked out of. And when the geese come, you slid this door down and just pulled your gun up and shot. And absolutely, got the geese with them. And then came, the evolution of the ground blinds, and that changed the game. Like, being in the decoys, and it was crazy. And then
that is what I miss about ground blinds, is being in the decoys. I do miss that,
and especially like being a caller. I love that moment when a Canada goose, is just about ready to touch down, and all of a sudden you jump out, and that goose goes, "Oh crap! Get me out of here." That's like it for me, right? I don't care pulling the trigger or not. I fooled that goose all the way to the ground. That's that. I mean that's my day right there. So, but ground blinds totally changed that. Well, then I remember going through the phase, because working for some of these outdoor companies, of, okay, why aren't they finishing? So we started doing testing on decoys, and then we started doing testing with blinds, and then we started doing testing. We did all kinds of testing, trying to figure out, why all of a sudden, did these geese not, finish like they were a couple years ago. And then, of course, the evolution went to being on an edge, being in 2x4s, and trying to just suck the geese over, maybe off the X and into the side, and tons of success, right? So, but like goose chairs, Lucky Duck just came back out with a goose chair. Being back in the decoys. Now let's take an actual blind with material away. Now you got just a decoy over your head. So it's just watching it. Just big one revolving, door, so to speak, of what worked, 20 years ago to now all of a sudden we're doing it again, because they're, and that goes back, and I'm all for, liberal limits, but that just goes, and liberal days of hunting, but that just goes to show you what 60, 70, 80 days with, 5, 8 bird limits, it's keeping guys out in the field longer. They're shooting more, they're educating more, and it's a different topic, but I think it's an interesting conversation.
Those big oversized shells you're talking about, or the goose chairs and stuff. Like for me, they're my first impression, they're Mickey Mouse
For sure,
right? It's like, okay, we've got this 6 foot goose decoy, in with our big spread, right? Come on. But I think that because that's what the guys before me were using when I got into it, right? So I'm like, we're past that. But the birds we're shooting at now, I've never seen that.
For sure.
Right? And so you're right. There's this big evolution swing that kind of comes around, and it's interesting. I remember North Dakota. I don't know if you remember this or not. North Dakota, we're with Travis, and we have our DSD spread, and I love our spread because they're crazy realistic looking decoys. They're just fantastic, and I take a lot of pride in them. I bag every single one of them up after every hunt. I love realism, and I'm a gear junkie anyway, so that's part of it. But I remember setting that spread up, and we've got 6 dozen DSDs out there, and Travis pulls out those big those crazy big shells, and I'm like, that it can't happen. I'm just like, it's like I can't have that in a video. Yep. But to his point, he's like, we'd kill over them. I'm like, I bet we would, but half the people watching this would be laughing at us.
Not this week.
Yeah. But it is funny. It's the stuff that we perceive as what needs or what works or what doesn't work. At the end of the day, it's the birds that decide that. It's like I firmly believe that green paint sells decoys, right? People like to see the decoy that looks nice, right? The detail and the how the bill looks and the head posture and all that stuff. But does it matter? it matters to the person buying it, right? But you made the comment the other day that by the time a bird figures that out, they're probably dead anyway, right? And so, yeah, but I also won't go as far as like my dad. My dad will tell you that, like you could put 2x4 blocks out there and birds will, it's like, I'm not going that far.
Right.
Especially when you get educated birds, because when they get down here, they are educated. It is incredible how birds will sit up high and they'll look and they'll look and they'll look and look. And I mean, sometimes you're working these birds for 10, 15 minutes, and then they'll do it.
Right.
It's different. It is so different. And here's what I would encourage anybody to do. Next year, as you kind of, or this year, I guess, now that we're in 2022, this year as you plan your season, plan to hunt somewhere that you've never hunted before. New area, new place, new environment, new people, and just go learn. Go learn the way someone else hunts. Go learn the way someone else does this. Go learn the way how birds you'll react in a new area, because it's eye-opening. It really is eye-opening, and I think it's incredibly fun.
Yeah, and I'm a realism guy as well. I love realism, but the story, back from my childhood, one of the trips that my father and I used to take was to Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee, and I'll never forget my first time going down there, getting in the boat, going out and going through some of the timber, getting to one of the blinds, because down there at that time there were blinds that were put up, and then that person owned the blind, or either on their property, or if you staked it, it wasn't a public draw. It was their spot. And I'll never forget pulling up in the first decoy spread, and in the kill hole there were real decoys, but everywhere else there were half of tires. There were 2 liters that were painted black. I mean, all kinds of junk that they could think of just to make that a black hole, so to speak. But where they wanted the ducks to finish, that's where they had, the decoys. And at the time, I don't remember what brand it was. It doesn't matter. But, that's what they had in that kill. But, spread looked ginormous. Even, coming once our boat ride back, when you looked back, it's like, holy cow, that, it looks like a big wad of ducks sitting out there. But half their spread were 2-liter bottles and half tires,
Isn't that
so
crazy?
Yeah, it was pretty wild. So I got one more topic, and then, I think it's about time for bed, because
my gosh, I know we got another early morning here. We're closing out on midnight pretty quick.
Yep. So, but and this could be a little winded conversation, but I think it's important, especially down here and in today's day and age. But thoughts on public versus private. And before you get into it, I just got a couple points of, obviously, public is a lot more challenging, because you got a lot more people. I mean, you look at some of these boat ramps around here, in the morning, and they've got a 4 a.m. before you can hit the water, and there's lines and lines of boats, and it's a sight to see, honestly. And guys are trying to beat the next group to get to a hole, and then if somebody else beat them to their hole, now okay, where are they going to set up to try to cut them off? And it's competitive, right? It's very competitive. Where you have private, either you have the money, the lease, or you've got property or your family or whatever, and it can be nice because you can farm it how you want to do it, and you can do whatever you want to do. You can put all kinds of money into it, and that's it. It's you go out to the same things every time. So, same plots every time or whatever. So just what's your thoughts on, I want to know, I want to hear what your pros and cons are for both.
Well, I think it's different place to place, location wise, right? Because when we go out to somewhere like Montana, there's a lot of public opportunity, and I would say, not the pressure. If you're a Montanan, you're going to disagree with me on this, but there's not the pressure that there is, say, here. There's definitely not. And here, I think one of the reasons, when I say here, I mean in Arkansas, one of the reasons I think there is so much pressure on public is because all the private stuff is pay to play, right? Like you have to pay to have private. Now at home in Wisconsin, it's not that way, right? Like you go knock on the door, you get permission, but there might be 9 people that have permission, right? So you're still trying to rush and beat, whoever's there, so you can get the field. And it's, I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. Here's what I'll say. Generally speaking, public is going to be a little more work because everybody has access to it anytime, and scouting gets more difficult. Getting right on the X oftentimes, gets more difficult, but it is that much more rewarding when it works out, I think.
100%.
I really do. Private is, like at home in Wisconsin, almost everything we hunt is private, but it's put on hundreds of miles scouting, find where they are, go ask permission, go set up, right? Here, the only reason I don't like private, which I have private, but the reason I don't like it is because you're hoping to run traffic all the time.
You're limited.
100% you are.
Right.
So oftentimes these properties have one blind or one pit or one hole in the woods. You're hunting that same thing every day. I know people down here that have fields that have a pit in them. They hunt every day of the season. 60 days in a row, they will hunt the same pit.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. I mean, you go look at the same sunrise, the same thing every single day. And yeah, you might get a couple days and there's a big push and you get new birds and it's nutty. But I would have to imagine that majority of days you're complaining because birds aren't finishing. They're not. And down here, what is even more somewhat bizarre to me is that most of those people leave the spreads out all season long. So it's the same decoys, the same look, the same everything, right? You probably shot at those birds that are not wanting to finish you're mumbling about. Very different. Public at home, it's a big walk-in, and so oftentimes people don't want to take the walk, or it gets pounded. Yeah, it seems to be one of the two. So it's your key principles are always the same, right? If you want to have a successful hunt, you got to scout and be on the X. You got to have a great hide, and you got to have motion. You got to have motion in the decoys. Stagnant decoys that are just sitting there not doing anything, unless they're early season birds that haven't seen it and are just, for a lack of a better word, dumb, like you got to have some kind of motion. Now, spinners are a big part of that, right? But if spinners aren't working, water motion, to be honest, I hesitate to say I'd rather have water motion because I think spinners help pull birds in from a long distance, help them, especially if you're running traffic. Like spinners help these birds locate you. But the water motion, like the agitator, that Lucky Duck has, is probably my new favorite, decoy because not only if you guys haven't seen it, it's a duck butt that has a pump and it squirts water out. And so when that squirts out, it hits the butt and the butt rocks back and forth and it adds a lot of motion. But with that motion, if you have a dead, calm day and there's no motion in the decoys naturally with the wind and water, that motion will make the other decoys move a little bit. And all of a sudden, that little bit, you added 3 or 4 of those in there, and all of a sudden your spread comes alive. It is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And so you still have to have all the factors. But it's more about, I think, knowing your area and knowing the birds. And, and the one thing we haven't talked about is calling. Like how you communicate. We talk about that with dogs all the time, right? How do you communicate with your dog, right? Communicating with your dog the right way is the difference between you being successful or failing. Same thing with ducks. Same thing with geese. You especially birds that don't want to do it. What I mean by that is that they're not coming there because they fed there the last 5 days in a row and they're just, that's where they're going, right? If you're trying to run traffic, you're trying to bring them in, it is how you communicate and it's how you tell them, hey, you should come here, right? This is a great place to be. if you do those things, it doesn't matter where you are.
Yep.
Right? That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm the same way. Public, I hunt public at home. Now, granted, some of the stuff that I hunt is, it's a state draw on this big lake, so there's set spots every year, that you can call your home for that year. You can put your own stake blind up, private or that's public, and you're hunting the same spot every single day. And
can you talk about that real quick? Because that I had never heard of that.
Sure.
Until you talked about that. I just think that's super interesting.
Yeah. So, and I know it goes on in other states and other properties, or other places, but basically every August we have a blind drawing, and on our lake's 10 miles wide or 10 miles long, 2 miles wide, and there's 70 some blinds. It fluctuates year to year depending on if there's houses being built or whatever. We've lost some of these spots, and then we've also had some other issues, blue-green algae issues. So they're trying to put these water treatment things in, and trying to make the water quality better. So we've lost some spots there, but you can still walk into them. So, but yeah, so August you put in for this draw, and they draw 70 names or numbers, randomly, and first come, you get to pick whichever spot you want. And obviously, some spots are better than others traditionally.
And is that just public knowledge? Like all you guys kind of know
Yeah.
where the hot spots are?
Yep. And I mean, obviously, if you're on the lake, you hear a lot of shooting. You're like, wow, they're really beating them up today. And, oh, hey,
Sure.
that's, that place is really, so you can hear a lot. And, just through the years, like even that being that big, 70 some spots, people start understanding, where the good ones are. So it's just not really a secret anymore. But, so you get that spot, and you got to post it with your name, your permit number, blah, 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 blah. But you can either not choose to put anything, just go sit along the bank, or maybe you got a boat blind or whatever, or you can build a stick blind and brush it, and it's yours for the year. Then it has to be torn down by a certain time, or you get fined. So I've done that my whole life. That's where I've grown up. It's, it's 10 minutes from my house. That's where I've hunted most of my life, and that's where I do a majority of my hunting. But now there are some spots that don't have blinds that you can walk into, and et cetera, that have produced. And, so that's where scouting can come into play. But like I said, being public, which public's great, right? There gives so many people so many opportunities. Even if you're not successful, at least you're out. And that's what private doesn't offer you. So, but, it's competitive. So, sometimes you got to get up early and, be the first one to the spot. And sometimes you do get guys that set up close to you because, they wanted to be in the spot that you're at. So they're going to set up somewhat close. And, it's interesting. It's just something I've always done, and it's quite the process. And like I said in our last podcast, Ohio has good hunting, and if I came across like it didn't last time, it hasn't. The last few years have not been the greatest. It's like, and I've noticed this trend over the last X amount of years from hunting quite a bit. You got your calendar migrators, so as long as the season dates are right, you get your calendar migrators. Those are, some of your widgeon and your gadwalls and the mallards and some of your divers. That just traditionally, they just know at this time that we're going to start heading south. And then obviously you got your weather migrators. So, but, it's just, if you're not there, there's been many a times where I'll get a phone call, hey, you need to be hunting today because, they're here. Well, I missed that day, and go the next day and you kill 1 or 2 ducks. It's like, oh, we killed 20 yesterday, but you don't. So that's how it is. So, but yeah, it's interesting. And
But let me go back to that draw for a second, because it's so interesting to me because it's so outside of anything I've experienced. So this is a public lake that you get drawn, you pick a spot. You put in the time building a blind, it sounds like.
Yep.
And you build this with
2x4s and plywood, and
so it's real work.
You go to the lumber yard and you go, okay, I'm going to have a 16 by 8 foot blind, and you build the floor, you build the back wall, side walls, front wall, and a roof, and go put a frame up in the in the mud or the bank, and put the pieces of the puzzle together and brush it all up, and that's home for the month or the year.
And then you have to tear it down.
And then you have to tear it down.
Which would be gut-wrenching for me to put all that work in, because I'm a perfectionist, and I'd be doing every little thing as much as I... So that's really interesting to me. But then you said someone could... So other people can still hunt this?
Yes.
So even though this is your area, someone could still move in and hunt your area?
Correct, yes. So the blind, it's just set spots. So, for instance, the particular spot that we had this year, there was a little channel that didn't come into the pothole that we were in, but came close and was just kind of a dead-end channel. Well, that's only 60 or 70 yards from where our blind is. Well, a couple times this year, we had guys set up in the end of, they were hunting the channel, but they were only 60 or 70 yards from us. And, obviously calling the same ducks, and you shoot that direction, it can be dangerous, especially if you don't know somebody's set up there, and let's say early in the morning a wood duck comes by, so you got to be careful. And most guys use common sense, but there are times that maybe some guy because we get a lot of outsiders, guys from the city, that will drive an hour plus to come up and hunt, and maybe they're not totally familiar like the locals are, and they just get in a spot that they think's good and it looked good on the map, and that's where they're going to set up, and didn't realize that, So, but also, if I'm not there, somebody else can hunt my blind. I can't put a padlock on that door. So if I'm not there, that blind then becomes public. But if I show up, that group or whoever has to leave. Or I can, they don't, if you want to hunt with them, whatever. If it's one guy, I usually say, hey, but most of the time I got a dog, and if they got a dog and I'm not sure who they are, then, that's a touchy subject, and usually it's like, hey, man, I'm sorry, but this is our spot. And most of the time people are like, oh, I'm sorry, we'll get picked up and get out of here. That's just, that's part of the risk of, of getting in a blind that's not yours. So... And I could go to any blind on the lake and do that. Just because I have mine doesn't mean that I can't go to my neighbor's blind the next day because the ducks were flying. I could, but if he shows up, then I got to go somewhere else.
So, and I'm probably missing something. What's the benefit of having the blind? I mean, if you don't get your area, that's your area. And this is just where my head goes, right? Sure. So you put in this work of building the blind. Okay, this is your spot. But somebody can come in and hunt literally right next to you, right? So it's not your area. It's just that blind. Then, if you feel like birds are stale and you want to let that sit for a couple days, so that other people bounce birds around and other people can still hunt it. Right. So it's not,
right.
So what is the benefit that you are guaranteed your spot every day, because if you show up and somebody's there, you can kick them out? That's the only benefit?
That's the benefit. And you don't have to put up a blind. You, like I said, if you got a blind on your boat, you can just, anchor down on the bank and call it good. We've got one spot that's called the firing line, and they're just blinds out in the middle of the lake. And guys will build these big blinds and then put boat hides on them, so they can just drive their boat right under this boat hide, get into the blind, hunt, and then, get back in your boat and go home. So I forget how many blinds there is like that, but yeah, there's just, the benefit of it is it's yours for the year, and you have sole, access to that for the year. So if somebody's in there before you get there, then you have the opportunity to tell them to leave. But also, if you, like I said, you go somewhere else and nobody's there, you can hunt it. Even if I have a spot, if being 10 miles long, maybe ducks they're shooting them on the west end, and I got a blind on the east end. Well, of course, we're not shooting anything on the east end. Well, of course, I want to go to the west end. I could take the chance to go down and jump in one of the blinds on the west end and hunt if I want to.
That's so interesting to me.
Yeah, it creates an opportunity for anybody. And then, like I said, there's several spots that there's been a lot of housing development, so we've lost some spots to housing development, but there's still some areas that are close, just as long as you use your head, not shoot towards houses or stuff, that you could still, you can sit on the bank if you want. Park your boat down the shoreline or whatever and set your decoys and set along the bank if you want.
So this is a very highly pressured area by the sounds of it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
So what do you do to be successful?
Like I said, the biggest thing is like your success rate. If you hunted that blind every single day, your success rate isn't going to be that great. Just because, if you hunt 60 days and with all the pressure and then the migration and the weather and all those other factors that come in, if you hunted 60 days, you obviously aren't going to smash them for 60 days. There's going to be some days that you don't shoot any. There's going to be days that you shoot one. There's going to be days you shoot 10, so you just never know. It's not like finding a spot, where the ducks are going and going in there and then having a good shoot and then going to go find another spot and, shoot them again. And obviously there's opportunities like that around my area as well, outside of the lake that, there's a refuge there and the birds go out to feed, so you can chase them and get in a cornfield, or maybe they're going to a river or going to somebody's pond, or somebody's got a wetland, or, so there's different things like that. But being public, it's like I said, it creates a lot of opportunity for people, but, sometimes the success rate isn't super high.
Right.
So, and that was one of the things with timber this past year was, it was warm, and the days that I thought were going to be good weren't, and we didn't see a lot of ducks. We didn't shoot a lot of ducks. And so, trying to get her over that hump, that was one of the reasons, that was part of my issue, is because I couldn't get her on that banger hunt. Even on private, some of the private stuff that I had access to, the birds just weren't doing anything. They were staying on the refuge or feeding at night or whatever, and I just couldn't get her on that hunt that she needed to be on. And, so those first few days hunting, it was just, she laid on her play stand and took a nap just because nothing was going on. So, but yeah, so it's interesting. Yes. And, to come down here and experience all this, obviously and I've come down here for many years as well. And I've experienced, like, back to the public and private, it's definitely rewarding hunting public, right? When you got a boat or do whatever, you can go out and you find your own hole and you shoot your ducks. Super, super fun. But it's also rewarding. Like, I've been involved with some of these private places where the farmers or the owners, they put a lot of time and money and effort, and there's one particular farm that I've had the opportunity to hunt the last 3 or 4 years where it's owned by a family. They hunt, they build it for hunting, and they've got a bunch of acreage and they've got a bunch of, blinds. So they're not hunting the same spot every day. They can hunt one end of the farm one day and then go on the other end of the farm and hunt the next day. And they got a little resting area for the birds that they don't hunt at all. So, and that's super rewarding for the or for the private guys that, do all that work. Some of these big clubs and, that bring in clients and stuff, that the clients, they come into these places and expect to shoot all these birds and, because you're paying the money to do that. So there's a lot of pressure on these clubs to produce birds, and, it's an interesting thing. So that's where I think, both have their benefits, obviously. I just think sometimes public, just because there's so much opportunity out there that, and if you put in the time and the effort, you can find the spots to be successful.
Well, one of the things I love about public is I just love exploring. We talked about this the other day. I just love going for a boat ride. and finding new areas and finding new spots and like, oh, I wonder if anyone's ever seen this before. Obviously people have, right? But like that exploration, I think really piques my interest as far as, again, just another part of the journey. And that's why, like, on this podcast and in my seminars and everything I talk about, I talk about falling in love with the process as it relates to dog training, right? But I mean fall in love with the process in hunting. Fall in love with the process in life, right? Like, this isn't, you win or lose, right? This is evolution. It's a revolving door. It's there's always going to be things to improve on. There's always going to be things to get better at. There's always going to be, but you have to actively buy into it. If you don't buy into it, you're not going anywhere. It's the same thing, hunting, right? So if you are hunting and not being successful and you're getting frustrated, you're going to quit. Unless you go, you know what, there's something I'm missing here. Like maybe I need to try this scouting thing. Maybe I need to find new areas. Maybe I need to go explore. And then when you do be successful, now it's that much more rewarding, right? And so, yeah, I mean, we could go on and on, about this. We've already been going long enough. So I'm going to end this with one question. Because this is the first year that you've hunted with me, I'd like to know what like when is there one thing, like if there's one thing that stands out as far as like how we hunt or like how we set up or how like is there something that like stands out to you, that because you've hunted with a lot of people in a lot of areas, and I think a lot of people do things differently, and I've never asked you this, so like is there something that you look at that's like you like how we do what?
The thing that sticks out to me is determination. Is you're determined to be successful, and obviously knowing you through the years, that's just who you are. So you're a determined person to put in the effort. You're a determined person to be successful. You're just determined, and so that's a key to me. There's a lot of things that we've talked about, like decoy spreads, and should we use agitators a day or should we use spinners? Okay, these birds didn't finish. Should we switch the decoy spread? Should we move this here? Should we pull the spinners? Should we put the spinners over here? So there's a lot of things that I think on a daily basis that I see as well. But yeah, the biggest thing that stands out to me is you're determined, and I know the biggest part of that is not for you, but for those four-legged dogs that are back here in their kennels. Mm-hmm. So, that's what really stands out to me.
Yeah. No, it's cool because it is why, it's why we're there. It's why we love doing this so much. And ultimately, if it wasn't for those dogs, we wouldn't have this camp. We wouldn't have the leases. We wouldn't be doing this. Yep. Right. And so it's fun to look at the why, right? So what's our why? Our why is those dogs, right? That's why.
Yep.
So it's a fun thing. I do think I think it's very unique. I think it's something that does make us unique, and I think it's anyone that's a dog handler or dog owner, majority of people listening right now, that is their why, right? And I think that's one of the unique bonds that brings us together and kind of cauterizes us as a whole, right? Like the dog people are different. The dog person in the group is wired different. The mental approach is different. They're different in a positive way, but it's different. And so that's what I think is so unique and so cool about this community is that all the messages I get after a podcast like this or after a story of a hunt I put on Instagram or whatever it is, it's like the dog person just sees it through a different lens, which I think is really neat. But thanks for spending this time, dude.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending the season, man. Yeah. It's been a grind. We've got a few days left. We're gonna grind out, but it's been fun, man. I can't wait. I can't wait for a little recovery time. I can't wait for training season. I can't wait for testing season. I can't wait to do this all over again. So hopefully there'll be a lot more of it.
Hibernate first.
Yeah, my goodness. I think I'm going to sleep for like a week straight just to catch up. But Yeah, so we'll keep you guys posted here the last few days of season. Keep following us on Riverstone Kennels. You can also find my personal page at Josh_Miller. I think it's _2 or something like that. I don't even know what it is, but
there's 2 in there.
Yes, the 2's over in there. But I'm putting a lot on there too. So go find us out there and follow along with what we're doing. So hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to Yukonuba, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.